Herzlich willkommen auf dem 40. Filmfest München. Wir haben einen Jubiläumsjahrgang und da passieren viele schöne Dinge und auch viele besondere Dinge, wie zum Beispiel, dass wir dieses Jahr 6 Weltpremieren präsentieren können bei uns auf dem Festival. Und eine Weltpremiere, die hat gerade stattgefunden, und zwar von Assaf Lapids Film The Return from the Other Planet. And it's a huge pleasure to meet you, Assaf. Welcome to Munich.
Thank you very much. It's a great city. I just told everyone in the panel it's under construction for some reason, but it's a great city still.
Yeah, everything's under construction. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's great.
Let's talk, of course, about your film, and let's start with the obvious question. What is the other planet? Who came up with that saying? And why did you spend, I heard, like 12 years of your life researching about this person and making this film in the end?
Well, I'll start with the end of your question. I'm a fan. I'm a bit addicted to this guy. This guy we were talking about, his name is Katsetnik. This was his pseudonym. His real name was Yechiel Dinur. He was a writer. He was a Holocaust survivor and a writer. And coming out from Auschwitz camp after 2 years, he actually coined that phrase, the other planet. The other planet was a concept that he adopted to describe Auschwitz. He talked about Auschwitz as the other planet, planet Auschwitz, something we cannot relate to, we cannot understand, we cannot think or talk about in a way. And he was the one coming back from the other planet. In the 70s, after having some severe blows in a way, on a mental state to his life, he was suffering from post-trauma. He had like 5 sessions of LSD treatments in the Netherlands. Afterwards, he came back from the other planet. He understood that this phrase that he coined wasn't a real one, wasn't a real understanding of what happened there. He said, no, we should come back from the other planet. He said I was wrong. I wasn't understanding the reality of the camp. And actually it's here, it's on Earth, it's people who done bad things or evil things to other people. And once you say, well, it happened on another planet, there is no lesson that can be drawn out of it because it's, something out of human perspective, it's another planet. But once you say, well, it happened here, you can rethink about it and you can say, okay, what should we do in order to prevent it from happening again? So he is the man, coming back from the other planet.
I have to say that I was not familiar with the name Katsetnik, but I knew House of Dolls. Yeah. I knew one of his books because the band Joy Division took their name from that book. Yeah. What is the reputation of Katsetnik in Israel? Because here in Germany, I feel like, at least my generation, we haven't really heard from him.
Yeah, I think even in Israel right now, I hope the film will bring him back to life in a way, but he was forgotten.
He died like 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, 2001. So 22 years ago. The phrase still very central to Israeli perspective, like the other planet phrase is still very central. People talk about the other planet, sometimes in very different angles, like there was a huge football match, it was like from another planet, okay? Things like that. But out of context, really out of context, but it's still very central to Israeli understanding, and the notion of this phrase is really central to Israeli understanding, like the notion that we cannot understand what happened in the Holocaust and we cannot understand what happened in the camps, etc. So in a way, no one returned with him from the other planet. And I think Katsetnik went through a very, how to say it, he went through a process with his books because he was huge in Israel during the 50s and the 60s and also in the 70s. But then he was totally forgotten. People wanted to move on. Because Katsetnik's books is like full of trauma. You can read that the man writing those books is post-traumatic. Okay?
Very violent, right?
Very violent, very vulgar, it's not sophisticated writing. It's like a man writing from his heart in a way, from his trauma. There's this guy in the film, he's talking about he's writing the trauma itself in a way. So it was really hard to read, of course, and people wanted to move on. People wanted something more easy in a way. Yeah. So he was forgotten, and I think also his writing became like parallel or like a role model for bad writing about the Holocaust. We want to have like good writing on the Holocaust. We want
more intellectual,
more sophisticated, something that we can easily draw on conclusions from. Like, okay, we read it, now I feel better about myself. And reading Katsetnik book doesn't make you feel better. It makes you feel disgusted, it made him feel violated. Okay, but this is the notion that he was able to bring to the readers, which I think it's very meaningful one. And of course, his last book that he wrote after the LSD treatment was overlooked at all. Like the first 5 was a huge bestsellers in Israel. The 6th one was overlooked. No one wrote about it. No one bought the book. It was like no one wanted to hear about the man coming back from the other planet, which is a very strange but understandable event.
When you make a documentary film about a person who's already passed, that is difficult. It is difficult when there's so much taboo and there's so much trauma about a person and, of course, about the Holocaust. I mean, it's such a difficult topic, of course. And the third thing is, you want to talk about LSD experiences and you want to kind of show that.
Yeah.
So how did you do that?
So I want to add another obstacle to that, because Katsadik didn't like to be interviewed or having his picture taken. So we had, like, when we started the film, we had like 2 pictures of him and one interview that he gave, which was like 20 minutes long. That's all that we had. And it was hard work, of course, because we had to dig into several archives to try to find letters that he wrote, diaries that someone wrote about him, a piece of, a book that wasn't released. So we collected all those items in order to bring a notion of a real person. Like I wanted, because it's a film about his mind in a way. The journey that the film takes is about his subconscious in a way. So I needed to have a really close relation with my protagonist in the film in order to get there. And what we used eventually, it was again a very long process where I'll skip the details, but eventually we made a CGI, a computer-generated imagery of the camp itself, of Auschwitz. We kind of rebuild the camp, okay, under computerized imagery. And this was the layer that was added after, like, most of the film was already in the editing room, in order to portray the subconscious, in order to portray the LSD treatment, in order to delve into the mind of this man. So this is how we eventually got to get familiar in a way with this subconscious.
Have you felt, when I talked to people about your film because I was so impressed by it, and I told people to watch it, and they asked me for a summary, and I said it's about an Auschwitz survivor who takes LSD, and they stared at me and they thought I think they felt I was going crazy, or that it's actually distasteful to say something like this. Like, you cannot talk about the Holocaust and counterculture LSD. Have you experienced the same, or did you even feel the same yourself? Like, this is such a wild combination.
Yeah, actually, for me, it was the starting point of this film, because like Katsadik books were distributing to every student in Israel in the 90s, and I was one of them. The first 5, yeah, that's the point. Like, the first 5 was distributing, and I was reading all of them back front to cover, and I was like, oh my God, who is this writer? And I was really impressed. But for me, it was a prototype of a Holocaust survivor. He wrote about his experience in the Holocaust. You can, by reading this book, you can hear about, transports and ghettos and death camps, etc. So it's like, this is how you should write about the Holocaust. And then, like, maybe 15 years afterwards, I learned that it's in the 6th book, the book about the LSD experience, and I was like, that can't be right. Like, how can we connect those 2 issues? Like, LSD and the Holocaust, there are 2 issues that wasn't meant to come together. And I thought to myself, how can I imagine as a reader Auschwitz under LSD treatment? And then this was the starting point, because I had to imagine how it would look like, and then I had to find the 6th book, the book that he wrote after the LSD. And again, his book is out of print because he was a bit forgotten at all. So it was really a task. And then I spent like a few months in order to get the book. And then when I had the book, I said, that's a film right here, because those 2 contradicted issues come together with this mind-blowing, for me, conclusion that he comes out with at the end of those treatments. I said, it's unbelievable. And actually, when I talked to people, I said, yeah, it's a film about a Holocaust survivor undergoes LSD treatment. I said, he done LSD treatments to others. No, he the one doing the LSD. on his memories from Auschwitz. People like, I don't believe you.
I don't know what the situation is like in Israel, but in Germany, for example, it's still a big taboo to use drugs to help people, especially with PTSD, also with depression. It's still very, very difficult to talk about that. What's the situation like in Israel?
I think it's mostly similar, okay, because there are some research being done in the last 5 years or something. But it's illegal, of course. Like, you can do research, you can do it by yourself, you can do it on outside of research and outside of hospitals. But I think it's coming back in a way because it was very big in the 50s and the 60s. Also, again, for the counter-cultural movement, of course, but also as a research and as a tool for psychiatrists. Okay, it was, and the research were really amazing. And they had really, the patients were showing really amazing progress. But then it was banned because of President Nixon, the American, because he thought that he had no soldiers to send to Vietnam, and if we take the LSD, everyone will come to Vietnam with me. It wasn't true, but LSD was gone. And actually now veterans in the States are legalized, they are fighting to legalize LSD. It's actually MDMA and ketamine. But I think that we'll see a huge change in the decade to come. I'm quite sure that this will be a pivot point.
You talk about that in your film, that Katzetnik, he didn't allow his books to be translated into German for a long time. And in the end, he said, it's fine because I want Germans especially to read my books. And what do you think? I mean, now that film has its world premiere, of all places, in Germany, in Munich, the capital of the movement, as they called it, the Nazis. How do you feel about that, showing the film as the premiere in Germany? And just guessing, but what would Katzetnik say about that?
I think he would appreciate it. I'm sure he would be very happy for me. That's my thinking about it. I think, just we were talking in the panel right now, and I was telling this story about Hannah Arendt, the Jewish philosopher. She was, of course, from Germany, and she had to run away during the 30s.
Saw the trial when he was...
and she was like very criticizing of him, but that's another point. She called him...
Maybe we should explain that. Katzetnik was in the Eichmann trial?
Yeah, he was one of the key witnesses in a way, because he was very famous. Of course, he never met Eichmann before, but he was kind of a key witness in order to tell what Auschwitz was like, in a way. And in a way, he did it. He really brought a very impressive notion of what Auschwitz was like by collapsing on the stand.
And he kind of switched into his alter ego, into Katzetnik and not his...
He started because he wanted to testify as Katzetnik. He had a pledge he took, a vow to the 6 million who died. He said, okay, I will be your voice. And he wanted to be the voice of those 6 million also in the courthouse. But it wasn't, again, you can't testify under a pseudonym, so he had to testify under his real name, which is actually his real identity. And then those two identities had to come together. He collapsed, he had a stroke.
And Hannah Arendt called that a performance.
Yeah.
She didn't believe it.
Yeah, she didn't. She thought he was like a scam, eventually. But and I want to tell another story, she had a story that she used to tell after the war. She said that once she was in a party and people approached her with a very sad face, said something like, I'm ashamed I'm German. And she said, I'm ashamed I'm a human being. And I think it's really very powerful. And I think this is the point I want to make in a way, because Israelis, Germans, we share history, of course, and there is tension like in the base of this relationship. But, and this is I think what the film talks about, we need to go higher, or we need to go besides the national identity. We need to go further, and we need to go into a path that talks about human being. And I think this is why I think Katzetnik would be happy for me to be here tonight, or to be here today, or screening yesterday. And because I think nowadays nationality is rising again all over, and we need to think about how or what can we do to change it as human beings. And I think if we stay with this notion, okay, I'm Israeli, you're German, this is like everyone has his own nationality, nationality will flourish again. So we need to think about, okay, what can I do as a person, as a human being, as an individual? So coming here actually is very meaningful in lots of ways, and I'm really happy that the German audience was the first to see the film, and we're coming to Jerusalem Film Festival in 2 weeks, so the Israeli audience will be able to see it, and I'm sure it will be different screenings, but both are really important to me.
So we are so thankful to have you here with us, and it's an amazing film.
Thank you very much.
And we hope you will come back soon, Assaf. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Assaf Lapid.
Thank you.
Thank you.